Porsche 911s are special, but this one is a special 911. It's a 911 GTS Carrera 4 from 2015. It's a 991 Gen 1. It's the last of the normally aspirated Porsche 911s. Hello, I'm James the Grumpy Petrolhead. We'd like to show you our Porsche 911 GTS, and it's a car we've owned for 8 years now, and so come along with us and we'll explain why we bought it and what it's like to live with a Porsche 911. So this 911 is a 991 Gen 1, and what that means is it's the last of the non-turbos. The 991 Gen 2s, which came out from 2016, even the non-turbo 911s actually have turbos in them, and it's to help with the emissions, etc. They have a slightly smaller engine, but with turbocharging. So we bought this car in January 2017, so it wasn't very old when we bought it, and the car had less than 1,800 miles on the clock when we bought it, but we had to pay £97,800 for this car. Ooh, that's a lot of money for a car. And I've been trying to find out how much the car would have been new in 2015. I don't know if anyone actually knows or correct me, but I think it was around 95,000 plus all the extras. For example, the PDK gearbox was extras, and there's a list of extras on the car which would have bumped up the price to way over £100,000. And yeah, so it's an expensive car to buy, but in our humble opinion, we're going to argue the case that this is the pinnacle of the 911. So, Catherine, can you explain why on earth you bought this car?
Midlife crisis, although I don't really think it was. About 12 years ago, I suppose, I used to have to drive the entire length of the H3 in Milton Keynes from Stony Stratford to Sherrington. So if anybody knows that, they'll know how many roundabouts there are, and it needs to be a little exciting. So I'd be driving along in the outside lane in our lovely Jaguar XK8, which I do still miss the V8 engine, just as an aside. And they used to be coming up behind me, not aggressively or anything, but I described it as gold. I think it's probably called champagne. And it would be a Porsche 911. So I saw this a few times, and I came home one evening and I said to James, I want a fat-bottomed Porsche. And it was a GTS, 911 GTS. And that really ignited my desire for a Porsche. I'd never been a Porsche person. I had been round the block, or driven around the block in the 80s in a convertible 911, the real kind of back in the day yuppies. And so that was my only experience of a Porsche. So it wasn't something that was on the horizon, but this one I just absolutely fell in love with. So I proceeded over the next, I don't know, few years or something. And I did lots and lots and lots of research. Every time James was watching a horror film or something, I'd go through to the office and go on the computer and start researching. And I found out that it was the GTS 4, like I said, with a really wide bum, basically. So I thought, right, okay, that's it. And we had a look at a Targa. We weren't going for new. And then I found out that they were stopping the naturally aspirated. And I wanted a naturally aspirated. I didn't want to go for the turbos. So I thought, well, lots of people, men, I hasten to add, probably, would be selling their naturally aspirated and trading up for a new turbo. I was wrong. And there were very few and far between. Like I said, we looked at a Targa and we looked at some other 911s and the GTS as well, the GTS, sorry. And I just thought the interiors were a bit, dull, really, after the Jaguar. And then, like I said, I found the Alcantara Extra and I thought, oh, yes, that's nice. So I actually found a silver grey one that was for sale. I rang up the dealer and plucked up courage, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, that's just been reserved, but we do have a red one. And I thought, oh, red's a bit, I'd never had a red car, and this is red, Guards red. So we drove over to, was it Birmingham from Leicester, I think, because it was a dealer in Leicester. Anyway, we had a look at it one rainy evening, and it was under the spotlights and looking amazing, and that was it.
Wasn't it 20 grand over our budget?
25.
Yeah. And then the guy wouldn't give us a discount, would he?
No discount, but he did give it a special wash. Oh, and he was so sweet. He was really, really nice, actually. Very good salesman, very qualified. He got it back to the Leicester branch and he sold it to us, or to me, I suppose, as if it was a brand new car because it only had 1,700 miles on it. I did say I needed to test drive it before I bought it, so we had a little test drive. But we've got the photo, and he put the keys in a box, presentation box, and I got the bunch of flowers. And we also got a track day, both of us at Silverstone, for the Porsche track day. So that was quite something. I was hopeless. James was really good.
We have a flat 6 3.8 litre engine, normally aspirated. So that's 430 brake horsepower with 325 foot-pounds of torque in a lightweight car. Now with the PDK gearbox and launch control, that equates to 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds and a top speed of 190 miles an hour. It's fast enough. Did I tell you about the exhaust button? I always have it pressed on because it's louder. But it releases a valve in the exhaust. But when you put it into Sport or Sport Plus, it comes on anyway and makes a bit of noise anyway. But with it off, and you say you have to get up early in the morning and trickle around a quiet street, you don't want to make too much noise. It is quite a quiet car. It has got a little bit of burble to it without the exhaust flap open. But yeah, whenever I drive it, I have to make the noise. Talking of options you can get on your Porsche 911, well, it seems to me that the base price of a Porsche 911 is rather high, but if you want lots of extras which are probably normal on a lot of other cars, then you have to pay even more money. I think the base cars come with very little, and the extras do bump up quite considerably the cost of the car. Now, for example, this is what the extras that the original purchaser bought for this car. Crikey knows how much that all came to. For example, the instrument cluster dials in carmine red, A GTS package interior, I think that's just the red stitching. The PDK transmission, adjustable seating, which are heated, which you get on most cars now, don't you? The damper control system, which is quite fantastic. Cruise control, again, you probably get that standard on most cars. A fire extinguisher and a smoking package. Not that we'd smoke in the car, but if we do, at least we know we've got a fire extinguisher in there. So if someone lights up, you can always put them out, can't you? Mobile phone preparation, cruise control, park assist front and rear, exterior sliding roof, which is the panoramic roof, servotronic, I don't know what that is, a Boss sound package, so it's got a slightly better speakers, I guess, and maybe a bigger amplifier. The rear apron's been painted. I think it's normally black. The vehicle key's been painted, which is rather nice. It's got automatically dimming mirrors with integrated rain sensors. Sill covers have been painted, and it's got privacy glazing. So who knows how much all that would have cost in 2015. Targa seems very appealing and it's a very good looking car, but I've heard that it can be a little bit noisy. And of course, just a normal hardtop looks good as well. But I think the sweet spot in the middle is this sort of large sunroof, which gives best of the both worlds. And the benefit for us, I think, is that for that large sunroof isn't so much to let the sun in, but it's to let the noise in. When that exhaust is on the overrun or just accelerating hard, it's quite something. So we have these Porsche adaptive active dampers. What that means is the dampers are always adjusting themselves. So if you're braking hard, they might firm up a little at the front, or if you're cornering hard, they might firm up a little bit on the opposite side to keep the car flat. So they're always thinking and working hard, these dampers. And if you press the sport button, the dampers then do everything the same again, but slightly stiffer. So it's a very good a system, and it works very well. What is particularly impressive about the GTS is its GT3 wheels. They're huge. The rear tyres are 305s on the back. They're just gargantuan. They're so fat they almost join up in the middle underneath the car. But they have these really cool central locking nuts in the centre of the wheel, not 4 or 5 wheel nuts like a normal car. They have these big central locking wheel nuts, and you need a special tool to get those wheels off, and they have a very high torque setting. So you're a bit of a problem if you have a puncture by the side of the road. We'll have to look into that, how to get the wheels off. But we don't actually have a spare wheel anyway. We have one of these puncture repair gloop that squirt into the tyre. And then presumably you get to your nearest Porsche dealer and they'll sell you a new set of tyres for a large amount of money.
I have to say though, I am a bit precious about it, taking it out. I know I should probably, everybody says use it because they need to be used. And I do try and use it. I've taken it shopping to get groceries, and like James says, it's got quite a lot in the frunk, the front trunk, whatever we want to call it, or the fruit as in the front boot. So, and I also once took it up to Birmingham to collect a friend of mine who was flying back from Ireland, and I asked her to give me all the dimensions of her suitcases before I picked her up so that I could take the Porsche. And of course, she arrived with extra luggage, which was a little alarming, but I managed to get everything in. She was going to do it, and I said, no, no, no. She's not into cars, by the way, but we did it. But so one of the other reasons is I call it the monsoon maker. It literally seems to rain even when I'm thinking about taking it out. And we used to have another car that we used to call the rainmaker because that used to cause it to rain. But I've literally driven out and it's like there's been a little cloud above me. And so it's rarely been out in, when it looks like the weather's going to change, which I know I shouldn't do. Like I said, it is only a car, but I am, like I said, quite precious about it. And I'm also a little bit surprised, perhaps I shouldn't be, about the amount of attention it actually gets. And I have to say the majority of it is really nice attention, and people comment on it and say what a nice car it is. Perhaps that's a little naive of me. And again, like I said, it's my first Porsche. But I must admit, I do love it. And, like I said, I'm really pleased with it. And it is nice that people seem to like it as well.
Yeah, we do get a lot of positive comments about the car most of the time, and people even let us out on side roads. So that's not too bad, is it? There was one occasion, well, we'd only just bought the car, and I went to get some petrol in it, and I was filling up with petrol, and there was this guy and his wife sitting in a car, parked up, and then he got out of the car and wandered over and started looking around the car, and not looking at me, just looking at the car, frowning. Then he eventually looked at me and said, "Oh, that's a bit flash, isn't it?" So I said, "Yeah, if you say so," and I carried on filling up. And then he looked around a bit more and said, "Oh, I bet that cost a lot of money." And I said, "Well, it wasn't cheap, so I carried on filling up." Then he looked around again, and then he looked at me and said, "That kind of money, you could have bought an Aston Martin." So being cheeky, I said, "Well, actually, we've got an Aston Martin. We did have one previously." And he went, "Oh," and I said, "Yeah, and I bought this one for the missus. And you know what? I think this is a better car." And at which point I thought he was going to have a heart attack. But it's funny what a stranger will come up and say to you, isn't it? Have you ever had an experience like that where someone's come up to you randomly when you're filling up or parking and say something rude about your car? If you have, let us know. It'd be great to share your stories. I find it fascinating that someone would actually say something rude to a stranger, but people do. Now, should you be on the Autobahn and you're cruising it along between 150 and 190 mile an hour, enjoying the performance of the car, obviously you're going to need a rear wing to push those rear wheels down onto the ground. And the rear wing on this Porsche comes up automatically at around 70 miles an hour, and it doesn't go back down again until you go under 50 miles an hour. But because it's like a big red toy, this car, you've got a button that you can make it come up and go down as you like. So if you're at the traffic lights and some school kids going, "Cool, look at that Porsche," you can press the button and have your wing go up and down. I've heard or read a little bit of sometimes criticism of the electronically assisted power steering, but we have driven other performance sports cars, and I have to say this feels the steering is the best. It's really quite something. It feels terrific. It's just right, very involving. It's a great system, and I think as the years have gone by, I think the resistance to electronic power steering has dissipated a bit because it's so good. Now the GTS comes with a chrono pack, and I think what that means is it comes standard with a lap timer, so when you do your track days, and a clock which also doubles up as a stopwatch as well. So yeah, but that's not an extra. We'll throw that in if you buy a GTS. This might be part of the chrono pack, I'm not sure, but the car has these two little features. One is a G-force meter. Yeah, it's got a G-force meter. Shows you how hard you're braking or how hard you're accelerating or how hard you're cornering, which is interesting when you should really be looking where you're going. And the other thing it has on there, because it's four-wheel drive, it's adaptive four-wheel drive. It's mostly a rear-wheel drive car, but you can actually see on the screen when and how much drive is being put into the front wheels. For example, if you're accelerating from standstill, you get an even balance between the front and rear wheels on traction. So again, it's quite fun to have a look at when you're driving the car, and it's that four-wheel drive system along with the launch control that gets that 0 to 60 down to under 4 seconds.
Really, I suppose also the benefit of not buying a new one was all the specification items. I always say to people, oh yeah, you want a Porsche, do you? Oh, did you want a steering wheel with that? Did you want a seat with that? Do you really want an engine? Do you want some tyres? Do you want some wheels? It's just, what colour do you want? And that's all sounds absolutely amazing. I've personally never done that. But this one had everything on it that I wanted, and somebody else had gone to all the trouble of actually doing that. The one thing that I do miss is the memory seats. I really do miss that. And I did mention that, and the salesman again, John, I think his name was absolutely brilliant, and he had an answer for everything. But he said, oh, I said, well, maybe it was another £20,000 or something ridiculous. And he didn't say that, but he said, oh, weight. There's a lot of weight in those. They wouldn't have gone for the weight. And he also added that those sorts of cars are usually just one-person owners. So I said, okay, well, James can't drive it then because he can't alter the seat when I get the seat in the right position. But like I said, I do miss the memory seats. We do have some friends who bought it's actually amazingly 3 years old now, but they actually ordered a brand new 911 after actually seeing ours, and it's a car he'd always promised himself. When he was younger, he'd had a poster evidently of a 911 red on the wall, but he bought a silver one, didn't dare go for red, sadly. But they ordered it directly, and my friend actually said to me in the end, there were so many questions and there was so much specification and options and things to go through that it actually became a bit stressful. The nice thing was, though, that they were sent photos and videos and updates from Porsche, obviously in Germany, as it was being made and going along the production line. So, I mean, that must be amazing. But that she did say it did become rather tedious and rather stressful. But I mean, hey, it's what is it called, a first world problem when you find ordering your brand new Porsche 911 too tedious because of all the spec options. But hey,
so we have had this car for 8 years, but we've only done about 5,000 miles. The car for us is like a special occasion car, something when we want to really look forward to driving it. It's not a car that we do use every day, obviously, but it's a car that can be used every day. It's got a fairly good size, was it frunk, a boot in the front, and of course it's got space in the back seats. You can actually get an adult in the back seat if they crook their head down and put their legs sideways. So it is doable, but really 20 minutes is as far as you want to go in the back seat of those things, unless you're a small person or a child, obviously. So yeah, overall it is quite a good usable car, and we're getting around 32 miles per gallon, which is quite extraordinary for the performance of the car. Servicing costs has been really rather minimal, really, comparatively to other sports cars, but have to bear in mind we've only done 5,000 miles. But the service intervals are huge, so we get the car serviced annually rather than on the mileage. And to be fair, the service costs haven't been astronomical. We changed all the tyres because they were starting to crack a little bit. They weren't worn out. And I think it was about 1,200 quid for a set of tyres, which I thought was very good for the size of the tyres and their Porsche specific Pirellis as well. I was watching Harry's Garage the other day, and he was talking to Clarkson, and they were talking, when was the peak development of cars? When was the peak car? And they settled on a year, 2015, which is the year of our Porsche. Now, their thinking was that as cars progress, and the cars that you buy today, they have less and less buttons, and they have big glass screens, like big computers, touch sensitive screens. And to alter things, you have to go into menus, and it's all a bit not so tactile as it used to be. Whereas about, sort of 10 years ago, we had the sat nav and the aircon, we had all the nice things and Bluetooth, but we had buttons. And it's kind of easier to find what you're looking for when there's a button. You can feel for it and feel the button being pressed, and it feels nice, which is, I think, it's more of a pleasant experience than doing it all on a big screen. But I guess that's personal preference. But talking about peak 911, with the car being the last of the normally aspirated Porsche 911s, with it being the 3.8 litre flat six, and the brake horsepower, it's not a massive brake horsepower compared to cars of these days, but it seems to be a sweet spot of performance and the weight of the car, and it just is a fantastic, enjoyable driving experience without being really, really scary. And with all the noise that it makes, and the tactileness of the interior of the car, and also the sort of practicality of inherent in a 911, I think you could make the case that this is peak 911. A GT3, for example, is too Spartan and too more track focused, and then the other more powerful turbos, etc. Perhaps they're more power than you really need. So I don't know. What do you think? What would you say was peak 911? But from our point of view, we think this GTS is exactly that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this latest episode of the Grumpy Petrolhead, and please have a look at our previous videos where we look at vintage cars and motorbikes. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, please have a look. And also please stick around. So in the future we'll be looking at other cars and motorbikes, and generally petrolhead adventures. So thanks for watching. Cheerio.